All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ashley Haltom. I'm the VP of Government Affairs for Georgia Bio, and we are thrilled for our inaugural Patient Advocacy Alliance Roundtable discussion. This group was born out of the Patient Advocacy Summit from last fall, and we're so excited that we've finally gotten everyone together so that we can give our patient groups and our industry partners an outlet to really connect, network, share best practices, and really just fellowship together. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Holly Snow from Amgen. She is one of our co-chairs, along with Stephen Mamaris and Dorothy Leone Glasser, both of whom you will hear from later in the program. So Holly, to you.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining this important call. I'm very excited to be able to bring the different groups together from the patient advocacy, from the manufacturers and providers, because as we all know, we're going through so much change at the federal and state levels when it comes to healthcare policy. And I think at the end of the day, our goal is one and the same, that we want to make sure that patients have access to needed healthcare medicine. So I think this dialogue is very productive and one that will help strengthen our activities in the state of Georgia going forward. So just by way of introduction, I've been with Amgen since 2013, and I am Director of State Government Affairs for the Southeast, which includes Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama. I'm joined with my colleague, Steve Marmaris, who works closely and directly with the patient groups, and he essentially has everything east of the Mississippi. So he keeps busy quite a bit. Amgen, who are we? We're a biotechnology company that discovers, develops, and manufactures innovator and biosimilar medicines for grievous illnesses in the cancer, inflammation, bone, and neurological and cardiovascular space. Examples of these are Prolia, Repatha, Aimovig, Otezla, Neulasta, and Epogen, to name a few. So I'm going to dive right in here. I want to start by beginning our first presenter, and that's Dr. Jessica Morrison. Dr. Morrison currently leads hemoglobin pathologies, I know I messed that up, medical affairs program for CRISPR Therapeutics, which focuses on gene editing for blepharospastic and sickle cell disease. Dr. Morrison's background is research focused, completing a doctorate in hematosis and manipulation of the process using checkpoint inhibition and small molecule therapies. Disclaimer, I'm in the government relations space, not in the healthcare space, so please forgive me. Following this, she completed 2 fellowships at the University of Cambridge and the University of Glasgow, where her studies examined epigenetic regulation of hematologic malignancies, and was part of the first team to characterize how drug resistance emerges to epigenetic therapy, including BET inhibition. Prior to joining the industry, she changed her focus from basic science to real-world evidence, establishing the Australian and New Zealand lymphoma and related diseases registry, and delivering health outcomes research in the transfusion research unit. During this time, she consulted with the Australian pharmaceutical companies to provide evidence and advice on how real-world data could be integrated into health technology assessment. I'm now going to introduce our next speaker, and that's my pillar, Dawn. She was inspired by her 3 daughters who battle sickle cell disease. She founded MTS Sickle Cell Foundation in 2015 to bring awareness to the disease and provide support to families affected by SCD. Her organization has helped many sickle cell families and children, hundreds by sponsoring week-long summer camps, providing financial assistance to families in need, hosting kickball tournaments and step-a-thons, and many other activities to draw attention and awareness to the need for support and advocacy for sickle cell disease. She has built a very engaged online presence of about 40,000 users from all over the world, and her awareness efforts have reached millions across the globe through television, social media, billboard advertisements, and speaking engagements. As a result, she's received many awards and recognitions for her tireless efforts. She currently serves as a member of the ASH Research Collaborative Patient Engagement and Education Subcommittee, as well as the Global Blood Therapeutics CBO Advisory Board. So with that, I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly, for such a comprehensive overview. I probably should have sent you a shorter bio, but thank you. So you probably can't tell from the intro that Holly gave me, but I've been involved in patient research and patient outcomes focused research for a long time before I joined the pharmaceutical industry. And so as again, Holly alluded to in my bio, I work in the hemoglobinopathies program at CRISPR. And so I'm very committed to hemoglobinopathies. I worked in treating beta thalassemia and sickle cell disease before I joined the pharmaceutical industry, and every position I've held in the pharmaceutical industry has been focused on helping patients with hemoglobinopathies such as sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. So today I'm not really going to focus on our clinical program, but I would welcome you at any point in time to ask questions during the question and answer session on our clinical trials if you are interested. But today I'm really just going to give an overview of CRISPR Therapeutics and our mission, as well as what gene therapy and gene editing is and why it sets it apart from the other types of therapies that are traditionally available in the field, and why the patient perspective and drug development for these types of diseases or these types of medicines really needs to involve the patient perspective from the start. So I work for CRISPR Therapeutics, as I've mentioned now a couple of times, and our mission is to create transformative gene-based medicines for serious diseases. And so currently we have a number of clinical programs. Our two lead programs are in thalassemia and sickle cell disease, but we also have an immuno-oncology program looking at lymphoma, myeloma, and renal cell carcinoma. So gene therapy is something that is often in the news. The most recent thing that you might be aware of was that Drs. Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for the discovery of CRISPR-Cas9-based gene editing. And we, CRISPR, as an organisation, are very excited by this because Dr. Emmanuel Charpentier is one of our founders. But gene therapy is not a new type of research technique or approach for treating diseases. Research into genetic therapy started in the 1970s, and the first approval in the United States for gene therapy, which was for an inherited form of blindness, occurred in 2017. So what is a gene therapy specifically? So there are two definitions that we work with. One comes from the National Institutes of Health, and that really characterizes gene therapy as a genetic therapy is anything that is an approach to treat a genetic disorder by providing new DNA to certain cells or correcting a target piece of DNA. And the American Society of Gene and Cell Therapy states that gene therapy is the introduction, removal, or change in genetic material, specifically being DNA or RNA, into the cells of a patient to treat a specific disease. So as I alluded to a little bit earlier, there are different types of gene therapy approaches, and the most utilized approach and the original approach involves gene addition. And this is really where we are trying to introduce a new functional copy of a gene into a cell in order to treat an inherited or acquired disease. So gene therapy is really packaging a new gene into a delivery vehicle, which we would call a vector, typically known as a virus, and this virus will carry the gene into the nucleus of the cell, and it will integrate into the DNA anywhere in the genome of this particular cell, and hopefully that gene will then be expressed, and this new healthy version of the gene is able to overcome the limitation of the original genetic material. So there is now next generation gene therapy approaches. And this is really known as gene editing. And what differentiates gene editing from gene therapy is that gene editing gives us the ability to target the DNA that we are aiming to correct in a specific area of the genome. So gene addition before is really the random insertion of a piece of DNA into the genome. Gene editing is finding a specific mutation and going exactly to that position to remove, replace, or correct a specific piece of DNA. And different gene editing approaches exist, and these include things such as TALENs, zinc fingers, and CRISPR-Cas9. And CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing is the platform that we utilize at CRISPR Therapeutics for our gene therapy products. Now, there are also different approaches to gene therapy. These are known as ex vivo, and ex vivo is typically, well, not typically, ex vivo means outside of the body. And in an ex vivo environment, cells are removed from a patient. They are modified using the gene therapy techniques such as gene addition or gene editing. And this is done in a laboratory. And then those cells which have the correction are infused back into the patient. There are also in vivo gene editing techniques, and these techniques involve material that is directly administered into the patient. So what makes gene therapies unique? Well, they give us the capacity to be able to treat a lot of very rare diseases that have had very limited therapeutic interests or advancements in the past. They have the potential to cure some diseases with a single administration, although some approaches will require a number of different administrations. And they are durable. So once you've gone through the treatment, they have a potentially lifetime effect. But what is challenging about gene therapy techniques is really that they are highly complex medicines and they can be challenging to produce at scale. And so many of the types of diseases that gene therapies have been developed for so far are very complex, as I alluded to before. And so what we do at CRISPR to ensure that as we develop these complex medicines, they meet not only the specifics of what will be required from approval by a regulatory body or a regulatory agency, that what we're doing with our medicines really incorporates the patient perspective. And so to be able to do this, we work with patient advocacy organizations, patient-specific consultants at all aspects of our clinical development timeline. So we have engaged early prior to starting our clinical trials, and we have incorporated the patient perspective as we have designed our trials. But it doesn't just stop there. What's really important from a patient perspective is ensuring that once a medicine is approved by a regulatory agency, that is accessible, and not only that it's accessible, that it is meeting the needs of the patient. And so to be able to do that, we have a lot of research going on around our programs to ensure that we build out patient programs with our commercial product that meet the needs of the patient. And if you're interested in what some of the specifics of those are, I will welcome you to ask questions about that in the Q&A session. But in the interest of saving time and giving you a much better story than what I've told here, I'm going to now hand over to Makala, who is a patient advocate that we have worked with at CRISPR, who has a beautiful story to share with you.
Thank you so much, Doc. That was so informative. Hello, everyone. I am so honored to have been asked to speak to the importance of gene therapy for the patient community. For many of you here today, you are an advocate because you're either a patient or you're inspired by a loved one who has caused you to use your voice, your energy, and your resources to shine a spotlight on whatever your cause is. And I am no different. As Holly stated, I am inspired by my 3 beautiful daughters who all suffer from sickle cell disease. Look at their pretty faces. Okay. I'm inspired by my 3 beautiful daughters who all suffer from sickle cell disease. So as a sickle cell advocate, it is my life's mission to make sure that I am making as much noise surrounding this disease as I can until there is a universal cure. So whenever there is such a promising cure on the horizon, that could fundamentally change the lives of not just sickle cell patients, but really many other patient populations, I consider it such an honor to be a part of these conversations. For those who may not know what sickle cell disease is, it is a genetic blood disorder that affects about 100,000 Americans and millions more around the world. It manifests in so many different ways, and it impacts every patient differently. In my family, our journey has seen a lot of pain crises, a stroke, acute chest syndrome, over 100 blood transfusions, jaundice, iron overload, too many hospitalizations to count, and many more. As I think about what gene therapy means to the patient community, one word that comes to mind is hope. I'm reminded of a very difficult period in my family's journey and the hope that the idea of gene therapy brought us. So over a year ago, my then 14-year-old daughter, Khadija, was at a very low point in her life mentally. At the age of 7, Deej had suffered a stroke, which impacted her speech, mobility, and other aspects of her life. So to prevent another stroke, she's had to have monthly blood transfusions. Since her stroke, she's had about 10 surgeries, one of which was a major brain surgery, and she's had four port replacements. Before her last port surgery, transfusions were pretty routine. Accessing was a breeze. For most people that I know, they require a numbing agent, not Deej. She just wanted to get it over with, don't count, just access. And she actually told me at one point that she was tolerating the numbing agents because she wanted to make me feel better. And she said, Mommy, you just look like you're the one getting poked. And in my defense, I didn't know that she could literally tell that I was holding my breath. So, but after her new port was placed on her chest, something drastically changed. Deej felt like she was being stabbed every month. So we were crying monthly at blood transfusions, which was causing a lot of anxieties about her transfusions. My upbeat and super optimistic warrior princess was becoming more and more sad as transfusion days came around. So one evening, Deej finally expressed to me what was weighing on her mind. She said, Mommy, do I have to do this for the rest of my life? For years, regardless of her storms, Deej has always refused being cured. It's called survivor's remorse, and she had it really bad. She never wanted to be cured without her sisters. And that's with everyone reassuring her that we're all in this together and that her cure does not mean that her sisters will be forgotten. But Deej always had her hangups about being cured, and I am 100% for wanting her to be comfortable with whatever decisions we make. But because these transfusions serve as a way to prevent her from having another stroke, we could not just stop them without a viable option. And so I encouraged her to meet with the transplant team at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, just to see what her options are and address any concerns that she may have. At the meeting, she had a lot of questions regarding the different curative options, those that are available for her, success rates, duration, her hair. She is crazy about that hair. She had questions about fertility and so much more. Of all of the options that were discussed with her, she was most interested in gene therapy. And even though no decision was made that day, she left out of there a new person. For Deej, she now had hope. Our transfusions have become routine again. Same placement, same procedure, nothing has changed. But because she now has hope that someday she'll be cured using gene therapy, she's happier and optimistic about the future. As patient advocates, we are going to be instrumental in making sure that all patients, not just some, have access to this hope. Just as we've supported families through their diagnoses and disease management and treatment journeys, we must now work to position ourselves to address the needs of patients who are interested in curative options like gene therapy. So while we think of ways that we can help, I have some suggestions. We all can help by raising awareness and education. For many, gene therapy is still very much science fiction. Awareness is very low, especially in communities of color. We all have a critical role to play in providing information and resources to help our communities understand what gene therapy is, the approaches to gene therapy and how they differ, and what families can anticipate throughout the treatment process. Another way we can help is by collaborating on clinical development. Your patient community will benefit tremendously if they have a representative at the decision-making table. We all have unique experiences and can offer important insights and perspectives on patient-relevant outcomes. We can facilitate patient enrollment and offer ongoing support to families, just like we're doing, to help ensure that years of clinical research really translate to outcomes that make a meaningful difference for patients and their families. We can also help by facilitating access. I heard the doc mention access. These curative options tend to be very involved and require extensive planning and ongoing support across the entire treatment journey. As patient advocates, we can help facilitate timely patient access to treatment by helping companies really understand and anticipate the needs of our patient communities before, during, and after the treatment process. Hope is that one thing that can help us get through the darkest times. I believe it and I live it. As we speak, there are many patients who are going through life wondering, just like my daughter did, will I have to do this for the rest of my life? Please be prepared to give them hope in any way that you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mapilar and Dr. Morrison. Before we move on to our next presentation, does anyone have any questions? I know that the chat function is open. If you do, you are welcome to submit them there or ask them now. And we will also have an open discussion at the end of the presentation where you can ask them questions there too. So if you have them, put them in the chat and we will circle back to those. Now we are going to move on to our next presentation. It will be from our co-chair, Dorothy Leone Glasser, with Advocates for Responsible Care. And she's going to give us a brief legislative update and an update on a survey that she's conducting for grassroots advocates. Dorothy?
Unmuting. There we go. Thank you so much. And I can't let the Don family presentation go without mentioning they are really our source of help. We are privileged that they are part of our RX and Reach coalition. And that is why this coalition that we have moves legislation under the dome. But we don't just want affordable access to medications. We never forget to include and treatments, because really the future of medicine, the future of people living better lives, the future of cures for these serious chronic debilitating diseases is in treatments like gene therapy. And we must be able to stand up and give voice to all the patients who need to be involved, who need to participate in these cutting edge treatments that are going to save lives. And we look specifically at not just saving a life, but improving the quality of a person's life so they can remain as productive as possible. That's always our mission. And Matt Ballard and the Don family are just examples of that. We have other small advocacy groups, just like we were when we started as the Advocates for Responsible Care, who really understand what it's like to be on the ground and lend that support in their communities, and to other people who lose hope because the battle is so tiring and it's so tedious. And they're there to give hope. And we just want to lift up their voices as much as we can. So when we're under the dome and doing our advocacy there, we look to pass as much legislation as possible that will be able to open up this access for patients, for all patient advocates who are struggling with managing their illness, usually a serious chronic illness, and being able to get the medications, these cutting edge treatments and drugs that they so desperately need. A few bills did pass this session that we are very pleased about. The most important is pharmacists being able to continue to vaccinate and healthcare professionals being able to continue to vaccinate in a health crisis like COVID. So that was SB 46. We worked very hard on having that happen. It had a rough time at the beginning, but we did a whole social media campaign just based around passing this legislation. And we had over 1,000 letters sent to our legislators to ask them to support SB 46. And I think it was that push that we did on the ground as advocates that really made the difference. We also happened to acquire 1,539 new advocates in the process. So this way, when we go to our next campaign for the 2022 session, we have more people that we can outreach to. And each time that we do a campaign like this to pass important legislation, that's what we look for. We look for how the next time we can increase the voice, let the voice go further and further and further so more people can come on board. And it also reduces the isolation that people are feeling about their particular disease state. And is there anybody that cares about what's happening to them and them having the ability to have the access that they need to get as well as possible? We had movements on an express lane for children who need Medicaid so that they could be on the ranks to get Medicaid faster. We had newborn screening for rare diseases that passed. We had a prior authorization act that we worked for years with MAG, the Medical Association of Georgia, to finally get something passed. That bill went through many, many changes. That's what happens under our dome, for those of you who aren't there and aren't familiar. But in the end, I think the most important piece for us as dealing with illness and chronic illness is that when doctors request a specific procedure or medication, that there will be peer-to-peer review. So if you're a specialist, you're going to be able to get that specialist to talk to and be able to say why it's so important for your particular patient to either get the medication or the treatment that you are requiring. Those were really important bills that passed. We're always looking to expand Medicaid in Georgia. And I encourage you, if you are not part of Cover Georgia, to please look them up on the website. And we have Zoom meetings every Friday. So please attend those Zoom meetings and find out what are we doing in Georgia to cover more people under Medicaid because too many people who are seriously ill are falling through the cracks. One of the bills that did not pass, but we're going to go back because I've been going back for 5 years with this bill, is for patients to get the rebates and the discounts that the pharmaceutical industry has given to us as patients to be able to afford these cutting edge medications. And it did not pass this time, though we gave, I thought, compelling testimony. We will go back next session and we will again ask for 100% of the rebates to go to the patients at point of sale. That is critical for us. So if you have a story about any patient that you know who is paying a high cost out of pocket for their prescription drugs, and even though they might have insurance, it's still costing them a lot of money because these drugs really are cutting edge. And the R&D that it costs to bring them to market is enormous for us. So please give me that story. My email is dlg@arxc.org. And Georgia Bio will put that in our chat for us so that you'll be able to see my email. Also, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. That's what we're here for. We're going to go back for the rebate bill. And again, we're going to see and be sure that we can expand Medicaid to meet the needs of the people of Georgia. Many, many people who are seriously ill are not able to still have Medicaid available to them. So it's something that it's an ongoing battle, just like our illness is for all of us, but it's something that, as Mapplelaw said, we don't give up hope. Hope is what moves all of us in that forward direction. And that's where we always want to go. One of the things that the Advocates for Responsible Care and the RX and Reach Coalition was thinking about this year that was important to us was how are grassroots advocacy organizations faring under this pandemic? We know that our larger organizations that we embrace and we love and support us have the ability to withstand the past year in terms of their operational functions, in terms of their funding, in terms of their staffing. But what about small grassroots organizations like MTS, Sickle Cell, like Red Moon Project, like My Style Manners for breast cancer? How are these organizations going to be able to hold on? What have been their challenges? What are the needs that we need to be helping them with during this time? And looking down the road before the next crisis hits, what have we learned from this experience? So we're going to be using some mixed methodologies to take a look at that. And we're going to focus in on 3 small grassroots advocacy organizations who have been very supportive of us and work with us under the dome to pass important legislation. So they're on the firing line. They know what it's like every day to go through this. We want to find out from them, what do they need? What have been their successes? What have been their challenges? And what do they see for the future? Because we know that down the road, there's going to be more catastrophic crises to deal with in our healthcare system. So we want to look and see if we could develop recommendations, maybe even a model of practice that would be able to help them in the future. And what can we learn from this that would apply to all of us as small grassroots organizations, as well as the larger organizations who have maybe the ability to step in and help a little more? We're interested in how their membership is doing, as well as what services they find are falling through the gaps. So we really thought that this was important to look at. COVID has opened up that opportunity for us. And we most importantly are looking in our communities that are most marginalized and that do not get the attention that they need. It is because of gene therapy that a community of sickle cell patients are able to now get on the map and get some highlight and focus in the healthcare delivery system. For years, and I go back to the 70s with this, sickle cell was never even understood by the general patient advocacy community. So now we have an opportunity through COVID to take a little bit refined look at who we are, what we're doing, who we're helping and who we're not helping. What can we do for the future to make us more empowered as patient advocates? So I hope that many of you will be interested in this. And as we have our future meetings, we have another meeting like this scheduled for June. And then, our big summit is in September. So I hope you will be there with us and encourage other people that you know in the patient advocacy arena to join us. We're going to be reporting on this project and what we're looking at. So thank you today for being here and for all your interest. And please reach out to us because we want to be here to help you too. Ashley?
Thank you so much, Dorothy. That was wonderful. And just so you all know, we did put Dorothy's email in the chat so you can access it there. And as she mentioned, we do have 2 more roundtable discussions scheduled for this year, as well as our patient summit in September. And we will put the registration links for at least those 2 roundtable discussions in the chat here so you can go ahead and save the dates for those. Before we move on to our third co-chair, Steve Morrison and Maria, I do want to circle back. Mapilar, we had a few questions for you. If you are willing to answer just a few here, I'm sure you can see them in the chat, but I'll go ahead and read them out for you.
Okay.
Paige thanked you for a powerful presentation and asked how you identify and elevate the most important needs for patient families from the community that you created.
That's a really good question, Paige. What really led me to create my organization is really the lack of access to support services. And so it's really a matter of first come, first served. Everyone have different needs. There is a socioeconomic impact that's associated with sickle cell that I don't hear enough people talking about. So the disease affects the whole family. A lot of families are literally an admission away from not being able to afford to pay their rent and things like that. I identify with it. And because I just felt like there wasn't organizations out there that I personally could turn to, I've created what I hope is there for me, basically. And so I don't put one family's need ahead of another in terms of elevation. Wherever the need exists, if the funding is available, we support. I hope that answered your question.
Excellent. And there was one additional question. How do you pay for the wonderful and appealing treatment? Hal asked that.
Medicaid. My children have Medicaid.
Excellent. All right. Well, with that, I think that Mapilar, Dr. Morrison, and Dorothy are going to hang around for a little bit, and you will get a chance to speak with them in the discussion. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to our third co-chair, Steve Morrison from Amgen, and Maria Thacker, President and CEO of Georgia Bio, to give you a little background on this group, what we hope to achieve with it, and where we see it going forward.
Hey, sorry, Christine and I were in the same office, apologies. Good to see everybody, and thank you so much to our speakers today. It was really an outstanding discussion, and I appreciate you both taking time to join us. Mapilar, I'm sorry, I've got bad allergies, don't feel well, guys, and Dr. Morrison. We're excited to now move into more of an open discussion format, but I believe I'm going to turn this over to Stephen to get us started. But Dorothy and Holly and Stephen, thank you again for helping guide Ashley and I as we pull this group together again, and we look forward to more continued opportunities and more discussions at future roundtables. And I'm going to say this once, and I'll say it again towards the end, but during this next phase, we will pop up a survey question to help inform how we will craft those future roundtables. So that'll be something you will be just, input your quick answer to and then continue to participate in the roundtable discussion now. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up before we do that. But again, thank you, Pilar and Dr. Morrison, for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, and I look forward to a robust discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. And I want to give a special thanks to the whole Georgia Bio team.
I can't hear you, Stephen. I don't know why. It doesn't say you're not on mute.
Maria, we can hear him. It's just you.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I just wanted to give a special thank you to the Georgia Bio team for pulling this event together. A very heartfelt thank you to Dr. Morrison and Pilar for your presentations. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, your family's journey. It's incredibly inspirational. Your message of hope, I think, is exactly what everyone on this call and everyone in this industry, in this line of work, what we're all focused on doing, and why we show up every day to do this great work. So my name is Stephen Marmaris. I am a part of the Amgen team. I specifically focus on alliance development and advocacy relations. I've been at Amgen for about 3 years. Before Amgen, I spent 6 years on the patient advocacy side, working with many of the great advocates on the call here today, most notably Dorothy, who taught me a lot of what I know about advocacy, and had the privilege of working alongside her in Georgia and some other states as well. Just as most of you on this call today, I have a personal reason for getting involved in this work. My mother was diagnosed at a very young age with a very aggressive form of muscular dystrophy, and I grew up most of my my childhood and my adult life watching my mother really struggle with that disease, and it being incredibly physically debilitative for her. That motivated me to get involved in patient advocacy and to really pursue this promise from this industry to really change your lot in life, to be able to change the hand that you've been dealt. And I think that's the beauty of this industry, is that we don't have to just settle with what we've been dealt. We work together to overcome our hardships, and I think that's really what this alliance is really all about. And that's, I want to transition a bit into why this was formed. We go back to last year, and we decided to pull together a summit, really to continue the momentum that has occurred in Georgia, to try to create a forum or a space for the patient advocacy community, the provider advocacy community, and industry to come together to identify areas of mutual interest, to bring great ideas to the table that might be occurring elsewhere in the country, and put a focus on them in Georgia. And we were really inspired about what we were able to get started with the summit. So the alliance is really a continued, sustained effort from that initial summit. We want to keep the momentum moving throughout the year, not just in 1 month out of the year, in September or late summer with a summit, but we want to have a continual dialogue with the patient and provider community. And our hope with this forum is to create a space where the patient community, the provider community, the payer community, the industry community can come together. We can be very candid. We can agree to disagree at times, but most importantly, we have a mutual respect for everyone, their priorities, understanding that one stakeholder's priorities may not be another's, but the understanding that we have to know those priorities in order to work through these incredibly complex and challenging problems that are going to take every seat at the table to solve. And so we started this journey. We put it on a course, and I think this meeting today is a really important step in that journey and in that course to really identify what's the value proposition for this, for this alliance. What is going to be most beneficial to the patient community? We don't want to duplicate or replicate other coalitions, that exist in Georgia or that exist nationally. We don't want to create additional meetings for everyone. So during this discussion, and we really want it to be an open discussion, we want to understand what are the challenges that you all are facing, every stakeholder on this phone call. What's keeping you up at night? What have you not been able to solve in your other coalitions or your other groups that come together? How can this coalition best serve you? And what, we think about the Venn diagram of priorities. What is that central, issue, or that one unifying, maybe it's 5 unifying topics that we can really focus on and dive into and create actionable next steps or change from, because we don't want to just have this as a forum that talks about big ideas, although big ideas are great. We want to eventually get to a place where we have very actionable steps where people can walk away and show value, not just to this alliance, but show value to your companies, to your community members within your nonprofits, to your nonprofit boards, etc. We want this to be valuable, on a bunch of different ranges. So I think with that, I'd love to open the discussion up. You see we have some questions here. We have 2 questions. What topics would you like to discuss for our June meeting? Here are just some options that we brainstormed: health equity in treatments, insurance coverage, health policy issues for the 2022 legislative session, or other, if you have a pressing issue that doesn't fall into one of those buckets. Second, do you like this format for meetings? Of course, we eventually want to get to an in-person setting when we can, when it's safe to do that. But for the time being, let's think of it as a virtual structure moving forward. And in that virtual setting, what keeps your attention? What keeps you engaged? We don't want to talk at you the whole time. We want to have an engaging, dynamic meeting structure in the future. So what would enable that for you? What makes you most comfortable to contribute, to feel valued and to feel respected? I think those are some core pillars of what we're trying to exude in this group. So if you could go ahead and answer those if you haven't already. And I'd love to just open this conversation up broadly to anyone that has an opinion. And I hope you all have strong opinions, because I know this is a very effective group of public speakers. And maybe I'll just ask the question, how can this group be most most effective for you to be successful? What can this group provide?
Well, I was gonna answer the question. The first thing that you said when you basically were saying, we don't want to talk. I think that visuals, that was really good when Mapula was talking and you guys showed the visuals of her and her daughter. It kind of, it made it more engaging, and and it went very well with her story and her, and the 3 kids. So I definitely feel like making sure you guys have some type of, something, just kind of give us something else to look at,
Yeah, that's great feedback, Corey. And we will take that to heart and certainly, implement that in our future meetings. Thanks. Hal, you want to go ahead, Hal? You're just on mute. You just have to unmute yourself.
And I just said something really brilliant. So I only know some of the people in this group, and a lot of them, but most of the people are very clinical. And I don't know if the audience is looking for more clinical advice. As we heard at the beginning, there were some really interesting things about the gene therapy. When I thought about patient advocacy, accessibility comes to mind. And part of that is goes hand in hand with how you pay for things. So if Mapilar has coverage through Medicaid, good for her, right? That's what it's there for. So I don't know if people are interested in the understanding of advocating for your patients purely from a clinical point of view, or the holistic view, which is not only is it right for me, but how do I get to a place that actually can provide the care, and then who's paying for that care? And if it's somewhat on the leading edge or more experimental, if insurance doesn't pay for it, where, I guess the rest of the question is this more going in the direction of clinical versus the patients are concerned about the story we heard about how a child is reacting? That's right, that's emotional, there's financial, there's geographic issues.
Yeah, it's a great question, Hal. And I think, this alliance can go in a lot of different directions. I think there's value in both of those spaces, both the clinical side, providing perhaps a perspective to the patient provider community internally on the industry side, or internally on the payer side, that would bring value to the participants here, that they may not have had access to those types of presentations or those types of contacts initially. I think that would be a great value, but I also do think there would be strong value here in discussing, as you coined it, more of the holistic side, general access policy, more landscape kind of assessment of the issue. But I would love to see I personally would love to see the alliance kind of take a dual approach and maybe cover both of those areas over time, depending on whether policy or landscape issues might be more timely at the moment, or there might be a new innovation in the space that we want to discuss, whether that be a payment model or that be an actual therapeutic. But that's just my perspective. I would love to hear maybe Dorothy's perspective or other patient advocates' perspective.
I just want to piggyback because I have sickle cell disease, SC, and that's why I'm here. And I'm also the founder of Red Moon Project Incorporated. And I've been wanting to advocate for sickle cell for so long, because I've had teachers tell me, to drop out of school in high school because of me not being able to be in class all the time. I'm always in the hospital. And one big thing that I've I did not understand as a child, but now that I'm an adult, is the medications and the health insurance. That right there was a big change for me once I got, into my adult years and adult healthcare. And Medicaid is taken away from me because if I make more than $1,000, I can't even get it. So I have to find jobs that have, nice packages that are gonna, offer the medical insurance for me, because I won't be able to find it anywhere else. And I mean, I've had jobs that I had to quit because I need the care, but I can't even get it from my own employer. And then you also have some hospitals that don't mind giving you discounts, such as Grady, but they only do it by certain counties. And there's so many counties in Georgia. So, if you're outside of Fulton and DeKalb, you can't even get that Grady card to help you pay for, a lot of the medications and the treatment that you receive from that place. So I just feel like, I think if we could try to expand that more, and have that offer to a lot more hospitals, I feel like that probably would get more patients to be more active with their doctors, their physicians, and it's not pushing them away from the doctors. Because I feel like once they leave child health care, it's a big difference, big difference.
So Corey, do you think it would be helpful if in future meetings we had, guest speakers that were experts in educating an audience about insurance coverage, maybe insurance coverage 101, the differences between public insurance, private insurance, maybe having a guest speaker that comes in and does that kind of education that could, potentially serve advocate organization leaders, that you can then take that information and channel it down to your respective communities.
I love that idea, and I think that'll be so helpful, you know, because I know I'm not the only patient here. So I know, you know, people, it's good to have this information so you can share it for the others in the community. And I want to be able to do that for the younger ones that have sickle cell and for our Black rare diseases. I feel like we need to know this stuff, because if we don't, it really pushes us away and deters us from the care that we could really be receiving, you know.
That's great. Yeah. So maybe what we could brainstorm moving forward for one of our future meetings is having that type of presentation. We could record something like that, and then that could be sent to the organizations that participate to distribute on their social media channels, things like that. That gives you something tangible that's valuable to you, that you walk away from the meeting saying, you know, I got something from this that I can actually use. That's our goal. Is really
that's great. That's perfect.
If I can just piggyback off of Corey, because I was thinking more when you asked the question, I was thinking, well, you know, a hub, you know, of information, something that a place that we can go to, like in the case of whether it's questions about insurance or the different topics that the member CBOs find important for their patient community, not just have those discussions on here, but maybe have them in a blog or however you choose to curate that on a website, so that we can always have a place to refer patients and their families to. And also, you know, for social media, we can create little graphics here and there to continue to educate, because education is a big part of everything that we do.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I saw that we just had a question come in to me. How are we going to bring these conversations to social media? I think a couple things come to mind. You know, first and foremost, I think the Georgia Bio social media apparatus is one that could certainly be taken advantage of for something like this, to represent, you know, multiple perspectives, multiple stakeholder perspectives at one time, to speak, you know, together. The other place my head goes with that is, we could create, as I mentioned in response to Corey's question, we could create content that could be customizable for organizations. So maybe we don't speak as an entity ourselves, but maybe we create tools that can be utilized over social media and customized to the community based on the content. So you know, a provider group may utilize content that we create a little bit differently than a patient group. But those are the two ways that I think I would think about, you know, utilizing social media, or how this alliance could have a social media use.
I wasn't sure what the etiquette was. Raise your hand, put something in the chat.
Just jump right in. Jump right in, Paige.
Hi, I'm Paige Rowe, founder of the Robin Project. We focus on childbirth safety in Georgia. And something Dorothy said really earlier resonates with me to one of your questions, Stephen, which is what keeps you up at night. And for me, what keeps me up at night is understandably the significant focus the pandemic is having on direction of resources and what that may be leaving behind. Mm-hmm. And as a small organization, how am I faring? I'm really struggling to try to, you know, figure out how to prioritize in legislators' minds, in, you know, all of these decision makers and healthcare systems' minds that, you know, we're dropping the ball on these other things. And how do we navigate that? And that's a really important question for me, especially because I'm the parent of a child with a rare injury. So, you know, that's something I would love to see presented later. And I think that, again, that might be something where as a group, we can all elevate and say these things don't go away just because there's a pandemic here. So let's not forget them. Let's not divert resources away from research that's being done, or let's not, we understand that care is being delayed. What can we do to help these communities? So that's my concern.
Yeah, that's great feedback, Paige. So just to kind of respond and get a reaction from you maybe. So what would that look like in terms of content from this alliance moving forward? As you were talking, what I was thinking of was maybe we have a guest presentation from a patient advocate leader discussing a program or discussing an approach to prioritizing education to their community about the pandemic, while also holding on to the core elements or the core priorities of their organization or of their disease space. Would that be the type of content that would speak to the issue or the problem? Because I think what something like that might do is give other peer advocacy groups ideas of to model, say, okay, that was successful. That approach of handling content was successful for X cancer organization.
Sure.
Maybe I can take that approach and customize it to our disease or our focus. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I think it definitely could be an aspect of that. I was thinking more along the lines of getting a sense of the upcoming priorities for departments like Department of Public Health, Department of Community Health, the governor's health priorities, what legislators are really hyped about related to the pandemic, and whether there are things our communities might want to weigh in on related to those. But, also that other thing you mentioned is really good. I mean, our kids are Children's Healthcare of Atlanta patients as well. So we tell each other, hey, it's okay to go to therapy. Like, it's safe, So things like that also are very useful. Like, how do you encourage people? What's been successful during this time in encouraging people to continue with treatment, or, how are they coping with some of these other concerns, depending on what the risk factors are for the different patient groups as well. So I think both would be very useful. But the one that I was really thinking of was like, I have no idea how to plan for what I would want to ask for, because I have no idea how the pandemic is affecting our decision makers and funders' thinking.
Mm-hmm. I think to jump in on that page, I think that was the point of us doing this project is first we have to identify what is a group like you challenged by right now. So we need to identify where are the cracks that people are falling through. And then we can look out of the box at how we can be sure that we fill in those cracks. So talking to you will be helpful, like it is to the sickle cell groups that we have and the cancer group, the grassroots. Where are the cracks for you guys? Because I know what it is for us. What is it for you that's happening? Because, I mean, you can get pandemic information anywhere, just like you can get insurance information anywhere. When we were talking about affordability, I'm thinking out of the box. So what's out there that's out of the box from traditional insurance that we need to be looking at a time of economic duress, particularly now going through a pandemic, that might be helpful to people? And also, because we're here with industry, how is it that in this country we cannot take care of people and have them have access to cutting edge treatments and drugs at the same time making it affordable for them? There's something wrong here with this picture, with this system. And I thought that's why we were coming together to figure out everybody's got to step up to this table. That's why everybody needs a seat at this table, because this is broken, cracked. Let's say cracked right now. And I want to find out how we're going to mend these cracks, because it doesn't make sense that we can have a vaccine in less than a year, 2 vaccines that are knocking out this drug, and that we could be doing gene therapy, but at the same time, people are dying from diseases that should be manageable. So I'm just telling you, I'm going to be that co-chair.
Speaking to that,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Go.
I think it's interesting that Monica Rockwell asked this question. How can we highlight the needs in the Southwest and South Georgia area? And that is actually something I spoke with one of my team members today about. The needs of those in places like Athens and Augusta, especially with adult care and sickle cell. They are lacking hematologists just to take care of them. So just trying to figure out ways to tackle that situation, feeling very removed because I don't even know if I've ever been to Athens or driven through it, but really wanting to help the sickle cell population in those remote pockets of, actually it's all over the country, but in Georgia, definitely. There are places where they have to travel for hours to come here to Atlanta to seek care. So just trying to figure out how to help. I think that's something that my organization can benefit from.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great conversation so far. I think we've got some terrific ideas and understanding about what this group wants, but I'd love to hear more. Are there other opinions or other folks on the line that want to share their perspective?
Hi everyone, this is Anthony. Our company is called Patient Advisors. So this is following what Dorothy and Mapilar were talking about. I think earlier we mentioned how at some point it would be great to have recordings of some presentations that can be helpful for patients. We're very much focused on the treatment space, and we've seen how there's treatments that are evolving, and yet not only is it patients that are not aware of them, there's also clinicians who are not aware of them, and it's quite difficult to basically connect the dots. So maybe there's a way that we can see how is it that, just as all of us are here today to talk about patient advocacy, how is it that we can have more patients become familiar with treatments? How is it more clinicians can become familiar with treatments? I mean, right now as we speak, there's probably a university lab that is progressing with so many different diseases, but how does that get eventually to market? Obviously, at one point, there's going to be a sponsor that's going to spend multi-millions, but we know of treatments that have gone beyond that. They're going through the clinical trials, but many patients are not aware. So mine is more of a question, but it's what we keep seeing is that this is a challenge for so many, and we're confident about treatments that we know are available, but neither the patients or the majority of physicians necessarily know about them. So that's really quite a big challenge that we see.
Yeah, great point, Anthony. I think that's one of the aspects of this group that excites me the most is the potential of this group to be just an enormous conduit to a very diverse array of stakeholders. So that's the power that a group like this has, to reach virtually every segment of the continuum. And so I think the challenge for us is just prioritizing, what are the issues we want to talk about? What are those issues that are most pressing, that are most important? And how do we channel this power that this group has? Because there are a lot of effective rock stars on this line right now, and we just have to figure out how to utilize this strength most efficiently.
So can I just say, I ended my spiel with 3 recommendations. That is to educate our patient communities, to help collaborate with clinical developments, and to help facilitate access. Can we then charge you to help us help our patient community?
Yeah.
So in everything that we're trying to do to help, can you be that vehicle that helps us? Say a patient right now, we're talking about gene therapy. Maybe I don't know about gene therapy. This is a start. But I am to help my patient community learn about gene therapy. If they have questions, send them the resources to learn more, ask their doctors, whatever that may be. Can we count on you to help us help our patient population.
I love that. And maybe we start with those three. Are those three areas, educate, facilitate, and what was the third, Mapilar?
Educate, collaborate.
Collaborate.
Help, you can have collaborating on clinical development, basically having a seat at the table, and to help facilitate in gaining access.
So one of the, in planning this meeting, one of the things we were discussing was trying to identify, the core pillars of this group in what helps us understand the content that we bring. And I love these three areas: facilitate, collaborate, and educate. These could be a barometer for us to, or a guide for us to kind of bring our content ideas to and say, does this idea educate people? Does it facilitate action? Is it in the spirit of collaboration? We could utilize those three core principles in that way moving forward. But maybe I may ask the broader group, are there other pillars, in addition to these three, that you think should be added?
Yeah, I do. So I attended to the Drug Utilization Review Board here in Georgia, and I was the only sickle cell patient there. I was the only one. And, it was kind of upsetting because they were basically talking about sickle cell like they knew it, but everything up there that they were saying was like, that's not necessarily all the way, true. But it was kind of hard because I couldn't comment at the time. And then, they already made their decision about what medication was going to go with what and how much it was going to cost. And I feel like what my pillar said, that's we need to start educating, and we do need the help to facilitate, because I feel like this will start to educate the broader, panel that's up there for the DERB meetings, because I think they don't really know. They just go off of what they hear from people or from bad experiences, because that's a lot of the things that they were highlighting on. And I really just wanted more of a backup, and I feel like I didn't have that because people really didn't know.
Can I make a comment on what Cora just said from a pharmaceutical perspective? And so CRISPR is very committed to representing the patient voice. And so I speak as a medical representative, mostly with physicians treating sickle cell disease. And these physicians believe they represent the patient voice. So often, when we're looking at drug assessments that Cora is talking about now, the agency who is providing the assessment will rely on conversations with experts, and these experts are typically physicians, to provide the patient voice. And so, I'm constantly told by physicians, this is what the patient thinks. I'm like, yes, but I'm also going to ask the patient if this is what the patient thinks, because this is what you think the patient thinks. And often when I back that up with patient-based research, the two things are not the same thing, right? And so I feel that a lot of the time when people are asking our organization, or not our organization, but asking what the patient perspective is, that patient perspective is being provided by physicians, and it is definitely not the perspective of the patient community that they're serving, or it represents a very small component of that entire community. And so representation of patients in these meetings is so important, because, like I said, my experience at the moment is that the patient voice is heard through the physician and not necessarily the patient or the patient advocacy group.
I appreciate that, and that really makes me feel good. It makes me feel good because, when you're in a room with a whole bunch of people, suit and ties, and you're by yourself, and you don't know what you're coming up against. And I felt like if I had someone who had a little bit more knowledge and the language of saying certain things, these people probably would have made a different decision.
And just to comment again on another one of the things that Mapula touched on around finding adult physicians that really understand the disease. If you can't find a physician to treat the disease, how are you going to rely on that physician to advocate for you? How is that physician specialized enough to provide a voice to a regulator or a government agency or a health technology assessment, be it from public-based funding or private-based funding, if there's so few doctors that you can't even find them? And so I think what I would put to this group is, yes, my presentation was very clinical at the start of this meeting, but I think it's very important to take into consideration some of the levels of sophistication with some of the therapies that are being presented to the community, such as sickle cell disease. Right? They're very complicated trials. They're very complicated products. They're going to be expensive products. You know, it's going to take a collaborative approach that involves physicians, that involves the government, that involves patients mostly, to ensure that we don't necessarily take a traditional approach to the way patients gain access to these medicines. And this is not just from a sickle cell disease perspective. Yes, we know there are 2 very prominent gene therapy trials happening in sickle cell disease, but the FDA is predicting that by 2025, we're going to have maybe 10 to 25 new approvals of gene therapy products per year. And they are all going to be expensive products. So, you know, touching back on Dorothy's point very early on about the system, it's a system-based problem. It's not one person's problem. It's innovation is happening. It's challenging the way that we've done things. And we don't have to just be innovative on a drug development perspective to ensure that we're developing new medicines to patients, but we have to be innovative around how we approach access to ensure that as medicines are developed, the people that need them the most can actually benefit from them.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Really, really helpful feedback and great points. Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet that wants to share some perspective or goals from this alliance? And there we have the results. So clearly health equity of high interest for this group. And also great feedback, Georgia Bio team, that the structure of this meeting was enjoyable or valuable to folks. So hopefully we can keep that up moving forward. Maybe just one question for the group. In terms of frequency of meeting.
Comment?
Oh yes, please go ahead. Anna?
I'm a postdoctoral fellow in Georgia Tech, and I'm working in 2 different innovations, and I'm interested in one of them is to reduce the cost of the development of therapies like gene therapy. But what I'm worried about is, like, I'm thinking about the patients and getting this therapy at a better cost, right? But at the same time, I know that if I do an optimization of the system for a gene therapy company, I'm just making it more profitable, right? They're going to be charging the same price, and I'm just reducing the cost for them. So I would like that optimization of the processes in the research and development stages, right? To reach the patient, and I know it's not going to happen, right? On the other hand, I work with the optimization of the treatment for leukemia, and this is going to be, we will present simulations of the response to different type of treatments, so the clinician can see how the patient will evolve. So this is personalized medicine, precision medicine, and now we are giving a pitch for Biolocity very soon. And I want patients to have access to that, because we need personalized medicine. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? You have underdosage, overdosage. We need to calculate the exact dose and schedule, and the drug selection as well is very important. So seeing this panel of the response to different drugs, having them showing the patient how the patient will evolve. So I will see my own, response to treatments, and talk to the doctors and see, okay, this is the best treatment for me. So I would like that tool that I'm developing to be as soon as possible with the patients and clinicians, right? But I need to know how that is going to happen. and I know the reimbursement is an issue, so that's why I wanted to join this. And I think the questions you ask, I would like to know how the system works, because I'm from Chile, so it's everything new to me, and how I can get these two technologies that are very different, but have an impact into patients, because that's what I'm working for, right? I'm not working for a pharmaceutical to make their product profitable, and I'm not working for any. I want them to have access, because these two tools that I'm developing are for them. So that's why it's so important for me. The same that Mapula said about having this information available, that I can go back to and see how we can. Okay, I'm working in this technology, and this is the route to give access to patients, right? So that's why I'm here, basically. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining us. Again, another great stakeholder represented, academia, and I think this forum could really be of value to showcase that message, the importance of personalized medicine. I think I think to your specific example, it would be great to identify which audience would be most valuable to hear your message, and for others on the line, I think the potential of this group is, once we understand which audience is important to hear your particular message, I think this group can uniquely bring that audience to the table, and that's how we can deliver value in your particular example, Anna.
Yeah, and Anna's situation, what we need is like a model project of utilizing this on a group of patients that it would be most tailored to and could easily utilize it. And then from there, once we have that model project, then we can expand it to other groups who could also utilize. So Anna, my email is in the chat. So email me about this and we'll see how we could set that up, because that's really what she needs. She needs like 2 groups at least of patients to use this as a model, using the tools, see the efficacy of the tools and how they use it. And then we can bring it to our forum to see in our groups here, who else could be utilizing that so that she could be monitoring it. And that's how you win over the doctors, and that's how you'll be able to get it through with the other stakeholders who will have to make this affordable and reimbursable.
May I add something to our wish list of projects we can work on?
Please.
So,
go, girl.
This is a systemic problem, but we have to start somewhere. And that's the problem of the disparities that exist that present themselves as mistreatment of sickle cell patients in the hospital when they go to seek care. And I feel like it's really because of a lack of knowledge. A lot of even the healthcare professionals that we expect to know about conditions, they don't know about sickle cell. And so if we can work towards, maybe picking, like just brainstorming that, whether it's going into a hospital, having a session on sickle cell disease, have some kind of a model that we can implement, other groups across the country can implement, just a way to educate a little more than the medical professionals are getting in school.
Yeah.
Something to make people understand that, okay, this is a disease that requires you to look at the individual patients. You cannot have, okay, this is sickle cell and it affects everyone the same. Your hemoglobin level is this, so you should not be in pain. That's how the approach is right now. So
one of the things we could do here is we've done this for other rare, the more rare the disease in terms of what people know about it, the more you run into this problem. So one of the things we could do is through the sickle cell groups, let's get together the information that's necessary at what as patient advocates, the healthcare professional needs to know that they don't know. And then the place to be able to do that is to schedule, have these little lunch and learns or teaching situations in nursing schools and with residents. And those are the people that you need to get to, because they are the ones who are at the bedside and they are the people who are with the patient the most. And if they don't have the knowledge base that we need them to have as advocates for patients, then the patient will not be treated as they should be treated. So that is also a way of breaking down disparity barriers, is knowledge. And I think that nursing schools and having something written up as a real project, as something, as a real platform that we can present, that's duplicatable, that's viable, no matter where we put it, that would be something that would be of value. And then other diseases could follow suit and use that format for them to also be able to instruct more. And, you know, you can hold Zoom classes on it for nursing schools, but I think hit the nurses and hit the residents, because if you have knowledge with them, you've got a much better chance of having more equitable as well as better treatment for the patients.
Yes,
Just to
thank you.
piggyback off my Pilar, when I advocate, my thing is always, because sickle cell patients see oncologists, hematologists, have the same compassion that you do for other hematologists and oncology patients with sickle cell patients, because we all see oncologists, hematologists. We just ask that you extend the compassion toward us as you do other, and that's the word I use. I don't say sickle cell or any cancer. And I know if there's not a sickle cell cancer in a city, which is my experience, there's not a sickle cell clinic here. So sickle cell patients have to go to the emergency, the ED, or they have to go to the cancer center to get care, because from my experience and what I've seen, there's only one sickle cell specialist in the state of Georgia, and that's Dr. Kutlar, Dr. Abdullah Kutlar, and he's out of Augusta, Georgia, and he's my sickle cell specialist. There are very few sickle cell specialists or hematology specialists in the state of Georgia, whether it's pediatric care or adult care. But
So again,
that's always my thing. Show us the same compassion as other hematologists, oncology patients.
So Monica, making sure that that's a component of the model that we're speaking about in terms of developing for education would be critical.
Thank you all so much. I think this has been an excellent conversation, especially for our first one. We are so grateful for everyone who joined us. And I see that we have a lot to discuss, a lot that we can build upon. And I think I speak on behalf of all the co-chairs when I say we are very excited to see where this group goes and what it can evolve into. Just wanted to let everyone know a few housekeeping items. There are some items in the chat, some registration links, Dorothy's email. We are also going to send a follow-up email with that information. We will also begin planning our June 23rd meeting, probably tomorrow, so that we can go ahead and get some information, some speakers lined up, and have that ready to go and start promoting. If you are interested in helping us plan some of these subsequent meetings, I do think that Christina said it sounded like health equity was a topic that was the most popular. If you are interested in helping us plan, if you have a speaker that you think would be a good addition to that program, please email me, and Stephen there put his email in the chat as well. Just shoot me an email, shoot our co-chairs an email, and we can get that conversation started. We'll also be planning for our September summit, which is a much heavier lift. So we will be soliciting help and speakers and topics for that in the next couple months as well. Does anybody have any other questions before we close today? Excellent. Well, thank you to our speakers, Dr. Morrison, Mapilar, and Dorothy, and to our other two co-chairs, Stephen and Holly. I think this was an excellent start, and we are thrilled to continue. Hope to see everyone in June.
Thank you.
Thank you.